Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense. Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I'm here with our other host, Joe LaVacca. You can find us on Instagram at Joe Gambino DBT for myself, at Strength and Motion _PT for LaVacca over there. You can find this podcast on Instagram, Beyond Pain Podcast, and on YouTube, Cups of Joe _PT. There's an application form down in the show notes, so if you would like to reach out, please do so. Welcome back, Joe boy.
It is good to be back, my friend. Good to see you, and we can tell the summer's here.
It's hot
The
down
tank
here.
top is out. Guns are out. The sun is out. My thighs are always out. So
Yes.
I'm always trying to show off the thighs. Upper body, I think, has always been a work in progress for me. So I can't pull off the tank top like Mr. Gambino over there with your nice broad shoulders. And I think listeners on YouTube are getting an extra special treat today.
Yes. That was the goal. That was the goal this morning when I woke up. In our 90, it's gonna be 91 today. We hit 96. It's been very hot down here. So
yeah, did you get hit with that heat wave that the Northeast got hit with too? I mean, it was brutal.
I guess so. We have been in the 90s for at least a week now. So
yeah, absolutely miserable. I'm out in Colorado again, judging from the background. I'm always changing positions here in Colorado, I feel, but I think it also keeps the YouTube followers guessing.
People should just be like guessing,
all the
what's
time.
Joe's background going to be?
Yeah,
today?
exactly.
Is it going to be Mexico? Is it going to be
yeah, bookshelf
the new
now,
bookshelf?
Yeah. White wall, glaring sunlight. Who knows where I'm going to be? Yeah, I'm excited to chat about today's episode because it was inspired on the way into the clinic. So this is a live, inspirational, moment-to-moment episode, really like a lot of our episodes are. I feel like we get inspiration, we just start rolling with it. But today, I figured we would talk a little bit about something that pops up fairly routinely, and I'm wondering why it took us so long to talk about it until today. But when we have clients and they're talking to us about their pain or their injury, one of the little threads of information that routinely comes up is this comparison to who they were. One client really recently, I may have shared just a brief tidbit on it. He was 71. He's had multiple spinal surgeries and fusions. And really, the biggest thing that we deduced that was holding him back in his assessment was the fact that he was just comparing himself to when he was 40 and active before he ever had any surgeries, any fusions, anything like that. So, the opening question: what do you do when a client is comparing themselves to who they were, and that's the biggest thing maybe holding them back in the rehab process?
Yeah, that's probably a very tough question. I mean, in those cases, this person needs to, how I would kind of educate in a sense, is kind of bring them back to where they are today and kind of where they are, and just kind of bring them to the present in a sense. Well, sure, when you're 40, you're feeling X, Y, and Z, and you're doing great. But today we're struggling with back pain. You're also 30 years old, 30 years older. And things change. And there's actually, I talked to people about this a lot, but also was one of these kind of posts that went really almost viral on Instagram. I think it was really about after the age of 30, every decade of life afterwards, you have a decrease in strength, a decrease in power. And there are changes that happen physically that are going to put you on a decline. That's why you can't be a pro athlete, unless you're Tom Brady, right, into your 40s, or LeBron James, right?
And even that had a cap.
Yeah. Right? So at some point, right, you're past your prime. You're not going to be where you were, and even 40, right? Like, I mean, that's, I'm surprised he's not comparing himself to even younger in a sense, because your prime is going to probably be in your 20s and 30s. So bringing it back to all of this information and say, hey, like you can't compare yourself to there. Sure, from maybe like a pain perspective, you can, maybe you want to feel that way again, but if you've had multiple surgeries, you have to also bring it back to that. When talked about on the podcast, when you've had injuries before and you have surgery, that things are going to change for you, right? It's more likely that you're going to have pain, re-injuries can pop up. It just increases your risk for injury. And I have a client now. She's one of the ones that we talked about in the ACL episode, and she's actually right now determining whether she's going to go non-surgical or surgical. And we were just having a conversation about it, and she was like, "Oh, well, I just want to like guarantee, right? Like at the end of the day, like I'm gonna have no issues in the future." And I was like, "Well, you have to be okay with like what are the outcomes, right? Like I like to be like outcome driven, right? Like so there are scenarios if you go non-surgical. I don't have any experience with it, but there's three scenarios that can pop up, right? One, you can not get back to your active lifestyle because we don't know I don't know what the outcomes are. I've read one article about it and it shows positive if you fit certain criteria. There's one outcome where you're going to be doing pretty well, and you might have some issues, but you're back to doing everything you want. And then the other outcome is you feel great and you almost have never any issues. And the same thing if you do the surgery. The outcome is probably going to be, there's an outcome where it fails. There's an outcome where you're going to still have some soreness and things like that, that pop up, maybe some swelling down the line. She's like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, like, once you have an injury, something is going to pop up, but there's a good likelihood of it. So I think setting those expectations and it made her rethink things in a sense. She was a little shocked by me saying it. And I think that people need to be prepared for how things can change because when things do pop up, they're going to be more prepared for those things. I know I got a little bit off of aging, but we kind of bring it back to aging. I think letting them understand that changes happen when you have injuries, when you've had surgeries, these changes that happen as we get older. And this way, sure, we can get you feeling younger. The whole point of training when we're in our 30s, 40s, even before that, right, is to make sure that we're making sure these as we age, the changes are not as steep. We want to build up as much as possible. And if you didn't start earlier, we can still build you back up and help you move better, feel stronger, have more power, all of those things. It's never too late. But I think when you give somebody that, hey, this is the potential now and in the future, when it does happen, like, oh man, Joe told me this was going to happen, like, they'll feel better about it in the future. So I don't know if that answers your question fully. I would love to
Well,
know how you navigate it.
like we always talk about, it's not about answering my question. I want to hear your opinion, and that's it. So I got Joe Gambino's opinion. That was great. I think it's always interesting when the aging comparison pops up, and I kind of handle it a few different ways. Again, depending on like how close I am to the client, or maybe how close I've gotten to the
Mhm.
client over
Sure.
time. But in the very beginning, and that comparison pops up. Let's just use my current client as an example. I kind of pause and I stop and I say, well, hey, I just want to confirm one thing. Was when is your birthday? And they give me the date. And I'm like, okay, so we are 71 years old. Is that correct? And they're like, yep. And I'm like, okay. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you would like to be 40 again. And they sort of, and then I just pause because I want to clarify that. And they go, yeah, I know that sounds kind of crazy. I'm like, well, it doesn't sound crazy. It just doesn't seem like it's a reasonable goal for you to be chasing. So I can't turn back time, but I can work with you right now. Then I say, do you like sports? And, you know, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But regardless, I'll always say, well, do you know who LeBron James is? Do you know who Tom Brady is? And those are the easy
Okay.
yeses. So they're great comparisons to say, hey, look, these people were able to maintain such a high level of performance, but do you know how old they are? And then typically it's, well, yeah, I think Tom Brady was 42 when he retired. LeBron James will be, I think, 41 or something like that when he
Mhm.
retires. I'm like, okay, so you're seeing this kind of cap that even professional athletes who are able to sustain this as their job, they can't go past a certain point or they have to start to deviate. Tom has to start playing flag football. LeBron has to start doing, 3-on-3 half court tournaments, if he's going to, continue to optimize his play. So I said, what in your history or experience or interaction with other providers kind of leads you to believe that it's fair for you to compare yourself to them when you were a lawyer, a social worker, a dentist, an IT tech your entire life? So the 40 hours a week you were put in for working and then managing your family, that was 40 hours a week. They were training and lifting and exercising because that was their job. So when you and I are strength training 3 hours a week, 5 hours a week, just know you have so much further to go to compare yourself to an athlete, and they still don't play past, the idea of 40 or 50 or things like that. So I'll throw in an analogy too every once in a while for them. I'm like, it's sort of like when you're in your kind of saving for your bank account. When you and I are younger, or when you and I are in our phase right now, we're building our businesses, we're building a brand, we're hustling, right? We're doing as much as we can right now. So then that way, when we're hopefully 60 and 70 or 80, I can just maintain, what I've built rather than trying to hustle throughout my entire existence. And I do think people can appreciate that a little bit. Like, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. I can see sort of the irrationality in what I am thinking or what I'm expecting. And then that kind of can open the door for a lot of people. However, I have had a few people who are like, yeah, I understand that, but I don't see any reason why I still can't do X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, well, that's fine. But then I don't think that I'm going to be able to help you because I just think that your goals right now are not realistic. And based on your previous history, and we've said this before too, by the time people probably find me and you, they've been through the ringer a little bit. They've seen quite a few providers and they're still searching for answers. So to even kind of take that back is like, well, how has this process been going for you thus far, chasing the fountain of youth? Has it been successful? Because it seems like you're sharing this story now for the eighth or ninth time. So when does it actually become a you problem
Sure.
versus when does it become a physical therapy or training,
Mhm.
non-solution or something like that, right? So I'll pause there. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it depends on, here, where we know how lofty or how big the goal, how far does it seem away. I think a lot of people, when they're trying to think back, like, oh, I wish I felt 40 again, or we'll take the person 70. It's probably the last time that they felt good about their body and where they were, right? So it's probably less of feeling the age and more of feeling like they can get back to doing things without restriction again, right? And sure, maybe someone's really hooked on like a movement or like they need to get back to CrossFit or whatever it is, right? And you need to maybe in those cases, right, you need to dial it back and say, hey, maybe we should try X, Y, and Z first. Let's get some success here, and then we can, let's let time dictate if we can get back to those things. But I think, a lot of times what I sense from people when I'm talking to them, it's less about I need to be 40 again. It's more about like, man, I just want to be able to go out and like lift and not have pain, or I want to go hit the links and
Yep.
not need to take a Tylenol afterwards, or if I want to go on a golf trip with my buddies, like I want to
Yeah.
be able to play 36 and not be dead, right? Or have to bow out. So that's kind of the more along the lines that from what I'm seeing, and I try to keep it there. And sure, maybe you need to redirect and educate and create more realistic expectations. Or what I like to do in those cases is like if someone's like really like this is a big lofty goal, is say, well, why don't we make some shorter goals? Like what can we accomplish in 4 months? And keep them more fixated on that, and then move the needle there and see how far we can get them. And then from there, hey, what can we do now in the next 4 to 6 months, and so on and so forth. So I think also shorter term goals can make something more useful for somebody. So instead of this big lofty goal that someone might be struggling with, that may be like, hey, I don't even know if we can get you here, but what happens if we backtrack this and start here and then take that one step at a time and see how far we can get you?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, like with not having to take Advil or not having to do this, and I think that's where a bigger mismatch occurs for me. It's like not only do you want to move backwards, or you're comparing yourself to a person who doesn't exist anymore, right? You also want to do it without any modification Or maybe people on social media or other providers have been like, well, no, you don't want to take medication. You don't want to be wearing a brace. You don't want to use a cane. And really, over the last few years, I've really just been thinking, well, why the hell not? And I've had a couple people come in more this week and they're like, well, yeah, I can run, but, I have to kind of keep the ankle brace on when I run. And I really prefer not to do that. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, it's going to make me weaker over time. I'm like, hold on, hold on. The brace that takes away your pain, that allows you to do activity like running and training, is going to make you weaker over time? Can you explain that for me? And they're like, well, actually, no, I can't when you put it that way. And I'm like, right. So if pain is your biggest barrier and you have a device or a medication that's safe that takes it away, then where is the harm in you using it safely, actively, as per the dosage? Not that you would need to wear the brace to sleep. I understand how that could be like a constraint. Not that you have to wear it around your house, but with the activity level that you're trying to seek, what is the sort of negative outcome of using something like take a brace, taking an Advil before, taking an Advil after? What are you willing to trade off in this process to get you back to where you want to be? And if it's not modifying the activity altogether, like 3-on-3 basketball or flag football or, shooting, I'm not a golfer. You are. What's the goal tees or the furthest ones? What's the closest ones?
Usually the black.
Yeah, the black.
Black would
Okay.
be the furthest, and then reds would be the closest.
Reds would be like, okay. So you want to play golf, but you don't want to shoot off the red tee. So where can I help you in this process when you're having a goal that's not realistic? And I want you to compare it to any other facet in your life. Okay, so you want to run like you were 40 or 20. Do you want to have the same bank account when you were 20 years old? Do you want to have the same friends? Do you not want to have kids? Do you not want to have your wife? Because if you want to go back to being 20 or 30, that's the life you're choosing. And I think, there's a lot more to your life right now than just golf, than just running, than just this. So maybe it is about reprioritizing, how important these other things are to you. How are you going to get back to things? What are you willing to trade off? And then, if I did have that close of a relationship with them, reminding them that they're a goddamn dentist, a social worker, like you're not a runner, you're a dentist who likes to run. You're a lawyer who likes to lift. You're not a lifter, right? So, and if you wanted to reevaluate that sort of like identity, well, then you got to give up everything else. Then you can't go to work tomorrow.
Identity is the perfect word for this. It kind of brings us back to Mike Stella's episode where it's like
Yeah.
for I think a lot of people when you have this big turnover, especially with age, right? It's almost like you're admitting that you're getting older, and not a lot of people want to do that, right? And they want to try to hold on to what they've been able to do as long as they can. So I think where we are, right? I mean, I think we always need to create expectations for people, like realistic expectations. I took something from you a long time ago when we were working at Perfect Stride, and I still use it to this day. When I have someone in chronic pain, when I'm talking to them, especially for the first time, it's like, nobody could ever promise you that you'll never have flare ups or pain again, right? But that's like an unrealistic, you know, probably the wrong thing for someone to promise you, right? And it's going to lead to poor expectations and negative outcomes in the long run, right? So I use that to this day, and I think that yes, we need to set these expectations. That sure, maybe you're not going to get here, but I also think that we need to the way I look at it, right, is I try to be as optimistic and say, hey, here's the expectations, but let's get you as close as possible as we can, right? Let's just get into training. Let's do all the right things, and let's see how close we can get you. And if you still need to modify, I'm perfectly fine with someone wearing a brace. I had someone I was working with here in the community with elbow pain, and in the beginning, he had to wear those. The thing that goes around your forearm for that puts a little pressure on it. Yeah, and it worked wonders for him. So I said, "Listen, do your push-ups, do your pull-ups. Those are the 2 primary things. Train, wear your brace. It allows you to do what you wanna do. Let's work on all the things that we need to do." And now he's actually at a point where he doesn't need it at all for anything. He still has some pain with some gripping in some certain ways and when he's doing yard work, but, like, all of his training feels good. So and I wasn't sure where that would go. He's older. He has a very, very long list of injuries. He's doing very, very well, better than I would have even expected from our first session together, I think we spent 30 minutes just talking about his injury history. Like, that's how significant it's been. And he's been doing great, right? So, I also don't wanna be like, when I'm having this conversation with people, I don't wanna be, like, so off-putting where they also aren't motivated in their journey, right? So it's finding that balance of, here's your expectations, let's move in a journey. Let's take one small step at a time. Let's move in the right direction. See how far we can take them. And I think I like small goals in that regard because it just allows us to push in a direction. And hey, we hit one milestone, boom! It's positive for them. It's positive for us, right? We feel good when we help people. That's why we're in it, right, Joe? So going through that journey, small, 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 and then at the end of the day, I think if you can get somebody a lot of small wins, even if they couldn't get back to like this big, huge goal that they had, or like, going back to this old identity, I think they'll be happy at the end of the day because they've seen all these small wins that added up to a long part, and maybe it allowed them to keep as much of their identity as possible. At the end of the day, I think that's probably going to be the win for that person versus the very specific, I have to do X, Y, or Z. There are definitely people who are type A, very I have to do this, and those are a little bit harder to navigate. Again, I think going about that way will be very helpful in small goal setting, and just, I'm always a big fan of just like, let's let time dictate what you can and cannot get back to, because I've also heard a lot of doctors who say, hey, you should never do this again based on the
Yeah,
injury or the surgery we've had, right? And I also disagree with a lot of those things unless it's very, very specific reason why. A lot of them, I think it holds people back more than it helps them.
yeah. And
Not
I
to
I
say that you do that,
really
Joe, but
no, I know. Well, I'm just thinking about like 5 people this week with the doctor conversation. Maybe that could be next episode. But no, I think the goal expectation thing that you brought up is also really great and really important to talk about. And maybe part of it in the conversation of, well, I want to get back to, where I was when I was 40. I want to be able to, run 10 miles pain free. And right now my knee hurts so badly that I can't do that. Okay. So sometimes my clarifying question is, so just to make sure we're on the same page, if we got your knee pain down to a 3 and you were able to run 8 to 10 miles, that wouldn't be acceptable for you. And they're like, no, no, no. Oh my God, that would be great. And I'm like, okay, what if we got your pain down to a 4, but maybe you had to spread out some of your workouts a little bit more? That's still not acceptable to you. And like, oh, no, no, no. That would also be really great. And I'm like, great. So right then and there, I just gave you 2 alternate goals that were not pain free running for 10 miles like I was when I was 40, and that was were acceptable to you. And then that's a little bit eye opening of like, okay, yeah, wow. So there are different definitions of success in this process that I'm about to embark on that no one has ever redirected me on. And I do know now, or I can see perceptually, that there is a lot of room for improvement before I even get to this end goal. So I think that was a beautiful point, Joe. My
yeah,
like
I love those
last
questions
little
too. And
yeah,
just kind of brings me back to those outcomes that we talked about with the person with the ACL. Like, this is, if we had these three things that pop up, like, are you okay with all of them or any of them, right? Like,
sure. Yeah.
so yeah, I just want to say, those are great questions. I ask those questions all the time to figure out what is really a success for somebody, and then the sky's the limit. Let's go as far as we can, but at least we know, and the expectations are now set that this might be the cap, right? And let's start to get to here first, and then we can get to the next one and the next one and the next one.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think my closing remark would be, rehab, strength and conditioning is not to bring you back to who you were. It's to make the most of who you are. And I think that's really where I've really focused my journey and my mindset with people. And that seems to have helped me. And it's really all about me, Joe, as we've talked about multiple times. And if it's easier on me, it's easier on everybody else. But I think that's really where I try to bring people to that sort of realization, or the way that I view rehab and strength and conditioning.
Yeah, and I like that because I think, and one takeaway for people on this, not outside of like, have good expectations and proper goal setting, is just making sure that, oh my God, I lost my complete train of thought there, Joe. I don't even know what I was going to say.
It was going to be good though.
It was going to be, well, it was just going to be pure gold, and I'm going to have to save it until it comes back into my brain, which will probably be at the top of next episode. Oh boy.
But
That was
all
lack
right.
of
Well,
sleep from last night that got me there.
look, they well, we were talking about little baby Joey. It sounds like he's fed and now maybe hopefully taking a nap or something. So
Might be at this
he'll
point.
be he'll be ready to rock and roll. So I know you will be, and sharing all your infinite wisdom in the next episode. Anything else you wanted to share for today?
We'll just end this episode on a negative note for me.
Well, Joe, we love you anyway. I love you anyway. Listeners, we love you. And don't forget to come back next week for another exciting episode filled with lots of practical information and wisdom on the Beyond Pain podcast.